Morning, everyone. It's great to see so many familiar faces in such a large crowd. Every local history starts in the Dreamtime. I'm not going to tell you about Indigenous history, it's just that every local history does start in the Dreamtime. And I actually sort of scrapped what I was going to write with these first few slides after Gail's acknowledgement of country this morning. I thought it was really good. We have a lot of myths in our contemporary culture about our relationship to the past, and one of those is that that past is something out there, that culture and that history is something that we're not connected to. So it's really good to take the time to reflect on that. So thank you, Gail. I'm going to tell you the story of Co this morning, or my version of the story of Co is probably the best way of putting it, the more accurate way of putting it. And it's a story in two myths. I'm John Baxter, as you saw on the entry slide, and this presentation is Myths of Co. That's just something that came up on Google when I Googled representative democracy, and I thought it was pretty funny that came up. So it got in there. This story starts back in the dark ages of government. Back in the dark ages of government, this represented how we got our information. We had a bunch of books, we had a desk that certain people came and sat in front of and talked to us. There's a window there, but there's a lamp in front of the window so that you can't see out it even if you're in front of the window. The next part of the story, we think, there's rumours, nobody's really sure how it happened, but a cleaner came in over the weekend and opened the blinds, and we got into the office on Monday morning, like, whoa, there's a world out there. And we realised for the first time, we kind of knew it all along, but we realised that we'd been operating under this myth that we had all the answers, and that we could come and have experts come and talk to us on the other side of the desk, and that between expert bureaucracies and electoral mandate, that we could make all the decisions ourselves. So all of a sudden, I mean, it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. We realised that we were operating under this myth, and community engagement was born. We ended up with things like town halls and a broad suite of community engagement tools, a whole practice, in fact, which broadened out into being community engagement as we knew it today. And eventually we need to sort of structure this and understand all these different tools and opportunities that were popping up. And what we normally refer to, and which has been a great tool for us to understand this space, is the IAP2 spectrum. You're probably all somewhat familiar with that. It helped us to navigate our way through the different options and what was going on and that sort of thing. And it's really come to define the space of community engagement. So you'd think that, you know, we've broken that myth and we're working towards it, that all we need to do is now do community engagement. It's great, but there's a tension there. Some people are probably holding on to that old myth, and there is always a momentum in the bureaucracy for operating under the old ways, and the old ways are defined by that myth. So there's a tension between those of us who want to see working better and finding better ways of getting the answers, and that momentum in the system. So we know that we can't just do better engagement and we'll get to utopia. And one of the sort of things that's coming out to me is that the better you do engagement, the more you realise that the spectrum that defines that space is limited. A lot of people that I talk to tell me about sort of how there's a bit of a car crash going on, and that's probably a bit dramatic. But using the spectrum, you end up squashing a lot of different things in together. Like you end up with collaborative projects and citizens' juries and community development, all these sorts of things. If that's how you're thinking about how you engage with people, they end up squashed together, and they're very different sorts of projects. So what I've sort of come to realise is that there's a second myth at play. That's He-Man, by the way. He was a big character while I was growing up. That we can do it all ourselves, just like He-Man can. And so this is a myth that we're breaking at the moment. Partly driven by realising that that frame that we've been operating under isn't the whole story, and partly by realising the fact that we're not shifting a lot of the outcomes level sort of change that we want to shift without working with other people. This is an example of what makes citizens die. Citizens have ideas and opinions, government makes it happen. That's a really genuine attempt to demonstrate responsiveness, connection to citizens, but it's also demonstrating that myth that we can do all ourselves. And so that's the second myth of Co. So really the story of Co for me is it's a story of two movements going in kind of different directions. One, that we realise that we don't have all the answers and we need to move towards engagement. And two, that we realise that we can't do it all ourselves and we're moving towards collaboration. And so I was asked to present because I basically added a line to the IEP2 spectrum and turned it into a matrix where on one hand you're talking about involving people and making decisions, and on the other hand you're talking about connecting with other people and collaborating and actually making things happen. So that's what we ended up with, and it's kind of remarkably simple. But the hope is that it will help to bring some of that clarity that the IEP2 spectrum has brought to engagement about how we engage with people more broadly as we work through that second myth. And that's just an illustration of the fact that you can put a whole bunch of things on that spectrum. It can help us understand our relationship to things like sort of free markets and collaborative projects and centralised decision making and that sort of stuff. And so it has been really useful in the conversations that I've had. It's helped me work out, because in the past, I'd talk about one thing and somebody in government might take that a completely different way, and so there was a communication gap there. And so it's really helped to clarify in those conversations what we're really talking about. And as we move through the second wave in this story of code, hopefully things are getting a little bit clearer as we recognise that we're pushing into new boundaries and into new territory. And it's not easy, because whilst there is a lot of collaborative work going on there and great things that we're hearing about today, it still is a bit of a jungle because it's relatively uncharted territory. So that's kind of what it's like these days. We're heroically charging off into the jungle, and that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek reminder that we're not all heroes, but it is kind of hard work, and it can feel like that sometimes. So that's me. I am operating in this space along with so many of you. I work for myself, helping people through that process of co-creation as they work through that second myth for themselves. Thank you.